How's it going, Eliminators? Today, I'm going to be showing you how to replace both the drive and the auger belt on pretty much any snowblower. So let's get right into it. So today, we are working on a Craftsman 24-inch snowblower here. You can see that the plastic belt cover has already been removed. My customer took that off to inspect what was going on when he lost his auger. It didn't work anymore, so he figured it was the belt, and sure enough, you guys can see here, the auger belt just completely blew apart. So he's removed the plastic cover, and I'm going to get into, how to change a belt, and I'm going to take you step by step as if this belt was still installed, so we'll get to that in a minute. But my customer also requested that we change the drive belt as well. And like I said, here is the service and adjustments part of the manual, and you can see, note, it is recommended that both the auger and traction drive belt be replaced at the same time. So as I said, that wasn't an upsell by me. That was the customer requesting it, and it's also stated in the manual. Because if this one blew, then chances are the other drive belt back there is also, maybe dry rotted. So we're going to do both belts at the same time. So the first thing you're going to do when you're changing belts on a snowblower is remove the plastic belt guard. Like I said, it's going to be a couple little bolts on either side. Once you get those screws removed, you can simply pull up on your plastic belt cover. Sometimes, depending on the design, you might have to fight with it and struggle with it to get it out of the chute right there, but you should be able to bend it and pull it out just like that. Now, like I mentioned, the auger belt on this one has already completely come apart, so it will be easier to go ahead and, get into the repair, but I'm going to be taking you through the steps as if that belt was still attached. Now, in the manual here, it says that, you're supposed to split the auger housing from the back rear frame assembly. Now, before you can go ahead and split the snowblower in two like this, you can't do that if your auger belt is still attached to the engine pulley, because what will happen is you'll go to split the snowblower and your auger belt will be pulling up against this pulley here. So, like I said, the first thing you do is remove that plastic cover. The second thing we're going to do is find our belt keepers. On this one, it only has one, and it is on this side of the engine. So using a 1/2-inch wrench or socket, go ahead and loosen that bolt off, and it should allow you to push out on that belt keeper. And then now, depending on what design your idler pulley here is, you may have to remove your idler pulley bolt so that you can remove the idler pulley in order to get maximum slack on the belt. Because we have to understand that the auger belt is going to be coming up here on the idler pulley and then wrapping around this pulley up here on the engine. So even though this is in the farthest point out, sometimes these idler pulleys can be so big, and you can see on this one that it has this lip here on either side of the pulley, that can interfere with your ability to pull off the auger belt. So you may have to go ahead and remove that pulley, and then you'll have enough slack on the belt. You should just be able to pull off the auger belt from this pulley up here. Now, depending on what type of snowblower you have and how it is designed, you may notice that you have some wire controls coming up for the chute control here. So that's what pivots it left and right, and these wires travel back. Now, if you have enough slack, you may be able to split the unit here without having to remove all of those cables. That would be nice, and I'm going to try that. And that'll save us a little bit of time from having to disassemble this whole complete assembly just to split this thing the full extent, because a lot of times you really don't have to split it as far as that illustration in the manual, because coming down to these pulleys, you're going to notice that, they're quite far apart from one another. But the main thing is going to be, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it, is this plate right here. So we just want enough room to be able to go in with the belt in between this plate and the auger pulley at the bottom. That's going to be your impeller pulley down there. So the idea here is we're going to split this unit, and I'm going to put something in behind the handlebars here to hold the back end up so that, we don't have to remove a whole bunch of stuff, because again, that's going to take more time. And to split a snowblower in two, it is very simple. you're going to come down to this bolt here, and there's going to be another bolt on the other side at the top, and you're going to go ahead and loosen them off. On the old Craftsman snowblowers, they're also going to have a bolt on the bottom side. On a lot of models, these bolts right here are kind of built to pivot, so you only have to loosen off these top ones, and then this whole back section will pivot back out of the way. But there should only be the need to loosen off both of those top ones. So I'll be using my cordless impact here to remove both of these bolts. Now, after just removing that one, we can see that we're already loose here. So when you go ahead to remove the other one, make sure you have someone or something in the back there just to kind of catch the back side of the snowblower handlebars when you go ahead and remove that bolt, because it will want to drop backwards. So with the other bolt removed, we can now split our snowblower housing. You can see that because I have the wires and cables still hooked up to the chute, that it is pulling the chute. However, this chute will lift right off of that bottom auger housing assembly. So like I said, I'm going to lower the back end handlebar section onto my little chair here, and then I will simply pull up on that chute to remove it. So if you are doing this job by yourself like I am, this is what it's pretty much going to look like here. You can see that, we don't have the unit split as much as the diagram in the manual, and there's really no need for that at this point. This auger piece lifted up just enough so that we could split this to have access at our auger pulley down there, and things might get a little tight at the bottom. However, our idler pulley here and arm can pivot to give us enough room to slip the new belt onto the bottom side of that impeller pulley down there. Now, here's a little note about this bracket here. This is your impeller brake system. When you let go and release that handle, your belt is going to slack, and this pulley would keep on spinning if it wasn't for this little pulley brake right here. So as you release, that pushes up against the pulley, which brings your whole auger assembly to a stop, right? That's for safety. So when you're putting on a new belt, we're going to just have to push this in. But if you're taking the old belt off, you are going to have to push this in to get your belt to unloop from the bottom side there, because it will be on the inside of that little pulley brake system. But now we are ready to go ahead and loop in our new belt on our machine there. But before we go ahead and install the new belt, you're going to need to know what size belt you're going to be running. So using the model number down on the sticker there, I went ahead and got an IPL. This is an illustrated parts listing, and you can just simply get these on Google. Basically, in the chassis, engine, and pulleys section, you're going to notice they have the belts labeled 1 and 2. Coming up to the descriptions here, number 1 is the impeller belt, that's your auger belt, and number 2 is the traction belt, that is the drive belt. There are your part numbers there, and those part numbers correlate to a 1/2 by 34.5 inch drive belt and a 5/8 by 38 inch auger belt. And you can see there that we are running a Kevlar belt for the auger belt. So not only is it a 5/8 belt, it's a little bit thicker, but we're going to be running a Kevlar belt because it's a little bit stronger, and the Kevlar belt will last a lot longer than the original belt because it's just a composite rubber belt. Now, normally if I'm using Kevlar belts, you will see me use a STENS True Blue belt, but I didn't have one of those in stock. However, I did have one of these, so that's what I'll be using today. And you can see here that this is a blue Kevlar belt. However, it's been sitting on the shelf for quite some time and has actually become quite discolored by the looks of it. So we're going to go ahead and take this belt and wrap it around the pulley now. Now, because this is a 5/8 belt, like I said, it's going to be a little bit thicker and a little bit tricky to get in, but just by pushing on this idler pulley here to rotate the idler arm, it's going to give you just enough room to squeeze that new belt in. Okay, so this is later in the video. However, I'm going to add this clip in to about halfway point when I've had the machine split. When you do have the machine split, go ahead and grab your auger pulley and try to wiggle it forwards and backwards or side to side. Sometimes the bolt holding the impeller pulley there, or the auger pulley, gets a little bit loose, so the pulley could wiggle left and right. Or sometimes the bearing for your main auger shaft there that can get a little bit worn out and you'll have the whole pulley wobble up and down. And I do have a video on how to replace one of those, so if you want to see that, you can click in the top right of your screen. But I just wanted to add that in because when you have your machine split, it's a perfect time to go ahead and check to see how your impeller shaft bearing at the back is doing and if it's in good condition. So now that you have your new auger belt installed with the machine still split, we're going to move on to the drive belt. And unlike the auger belt that has a movable idler pulley to engage and disengage it, the drive belt, or traction belt as it's called, is always going to be under spring tension via this idler arm and idler pulley here. So it's going to have this spring there pulling it to put tension on your drive belt. Now in this particular unit here, we have what's known as a drive plate. And this drive plate, you can see, has a nut there, and that bolt goes back to the drive pulley. Now, what you're gonna notice is there's also this rod up here, and that goes back to your drive lever on your handle. So as you engage that, this whole system here pivots and moves, and this drive pulley is your drive plate that the friction wheel engages on. So because this model has this plate here, we're not going to be able to get the drive belt out from this side. So what we're going to be doing is, once I loosen off the tension on this idler there, we're going to be looping the drive belt here off of the bottom of the pulley into the back section here. And then we'll be able to pull it up so that we'll have enough length up here to kind of, take it off of the drive pulley here. Because what you're not going to be able to do is take it off of the drive pulleys up here, because this one is extended for the auger pulley. It's a little bit longer, and you need that extra length by removing it from the bottom pulley first. And if you want to make it easy for yourself, just go ahead and disconnect the idler spring there. So the design of this one's actually quite nice because I was able to rotate that idler arm right out of the way. My spring's laying there, so I don't have to worry about that falling down. And with the belt here in the middle section, so it can drop down a little bit further, what we're gonna do is, like I said, just try to pop that belt off of the pulley and then rotate it down like this so that it just slides off the edge of that pulley down there. So it might be difficult to see, but we're off on this side. So we're going to come around to this side here, and we're going to do the same thing, just kind of loop that off of there. So we can now go ahead and just kind of fish this out. Now it may be difficult to see, but we are getting stuck underneath the friction wheel there, right? So because the friction wheel rolls, you're just simply going to grab a hold of your belt and give it a firm pull up, and your drive belt comes right out. And looking at the condition of this belt, you guys can see that it is starting to fray and bust apart. So there you go. That is a good reason to follow your manual's recommendations, the manufacturer's recommendations. They put these things in the manual for a reason. That, if your auger belt snapped, chances are this one is going to go pretty soon as well. And like I said, my customer requested that. I would have inspected his other belt, because you might as well do both belts at the same time while you're there. And, these belts are fairly inexpensive compared to having to go and pick up a machine and do a whole nother one of these repairs just to do another belt that you could have done, at the same time you did your auger belt there. So I have a brand new 1/2 by 34.5 inch STENS belt here. And this one is not Kevlar. STENS does not make Kevlar belts in the 1/2 inch, in between range. So they have, like, let's say a 1/2 by 34 inch Kevlar belt, but they don't have a 1/2 by 34.5 inch belt. So, those kind of in between ones, they don't have Kevlar belts for that. So we're just using an OEM STENS replacement belt here. And, similar to how we pulled to get the old belt out of that friction wheel because it rolls there, we are now going to push down so that that friction wheel rolls and allows this belt to pass it. Then we can go ahead and wrap the belt around the top section first, and then go ahead, loop it around the bottom section of the pulley, and then loop it up to the top part of that pulley there. So you're essentially going to do the opposite of what you just did to take the belt off, to go ahead and put the new one on. And like I said, guys, it really doesn't take much tension or force at all. Because that friction wheel rolls, you're just simply putting it on top of that friction wheel and then just kind of wedging it in and pushing it down. It also helps to rotate this pulley here, the friction plate, depending on where your shifter is set, will determine where your friction wheel is. So if it's on, let's say, the right side, then it just helps to rotate this friction plate here, and that just helps things roll down and pop into place nicely. And like I said, because the belt is now past that friction wheel, go ahead and wrap your belt up around the engine pulley here, keeping it inside of the center lowered part here, and then that will give you enough slack to go ahead and wrap the belt around your pulley down here. A little trick that I'll give you is that you want to start from one side of the pulley, and once you're in the groove on one side of the pulley, what we're going to do is rotate the pulley around in the direction that it will kind of pull the belt around that little lip, and eventually it will loop this belt up onto the pulley. So I started off by putting the belt into the groove on the right side of the pulley there, and by rotating the pulley in the clockwise direction, we're at the point now where we can just keep rotating, and like I said, it just kind of lines itself up to the groove, and it will kind of set itself just like that. Go ahead and just spin it around, make sure that the belt doesn't pop off, and then now you can go ahead and pop that belt into the upper groove there. So I've gone ahead and hooked the spring up, and now our drive belt has been replaced. Simple as that. You know, this isn't really hard work, but again, depending on how your machine is designed, you could have to take off a bunch of stuff. You know, we got lucky here. This kind of chute control just kind of popped right off, and it's been designed like that so that you don't have to go ahead and disconnect all your cables up here. Now, this may be the trickiest part of the job if you're doing this by yourself, but at this point, you're going to have to lift up the backside of the machine until both of these parts are level. However, when the backside of this unit is coming up to the auger housing here, you're going to have to simultaneously push in this idler bracket here to open up your brake to the point where the brake fits over top of the belt there. And then you can go ahead and worry about looping your belt in. And, you know, depending on if I have enough slack on this belt, I may be able to wrap it around the top pulley. I may have to remove this pulley so that I can come straight through, wrap it up, and then go ahead and install that pulley. So getting a shot through the auger here, you can see that my brake is on the outside of the belt. I've gone ahead and just kind of fit up the chute loosely onto there. And then I'm just trying to position things now to the point where I can just fit a bolt in. And I'm going to try to get the belt on to the pulley up top there, with the idler pulley still on the idler arm. So because I'm trying to show you how to do this yourself like I am here, for the time being, I've just installed the bolt loosely to hold both halves of the unit together. And you can see that the belt is fairly tight with this idler pulley on. So like I said, you could go ahead and remove that just so that you can get a little more, you know, slack on your belt here to loop it around. But here's a little trick. So with the belt wrapped around, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of tension on that pull cord. And it is wrapping itself around. And then I should be able to just fit that in just like that. And now our new auger belt has been installed. So we have to remember that, you know, I am doing this for a living. So while I always try to find efficient ways at working to get the job done a little bit quicker, you know, instead of going ahead and removing a bunch of other stuff that may not be necessary, it could make the job easier. However, that may be more time consuming. And in my line of work, time is money. I have to charge the customer at the end of the day. So for a job like this, I'm going to charge a half-hour minimum for my customer. It's a very quick and simple job. Obviously, it took me a little bit longer because I'm filming, but, you know, for the average person, you're going to be into it from anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. So now that both of the bolts holding the back half of the unit to the auger housing have been tightened up, we're going to move back to the belt keeper here. So if you'll remember, it was to the point where it was just barely touching the drive belt. So what we're going to do is set it into that position and then go ahead and tighten up that bolt. So like I said, the belt keeper here was barely touching the drive belt. So that is pretty close to where I want it. I've gone ahead and tightened that bolt up. And what I would recommend now, if you're going to go ahead and take this thing out to test it out, go ahead and leave your plastic cover off. And that way you can see what's going on with the belt. And also you can go ahead and test the tension. So ideally what we're going to want to do here is go up to the auger handle and press that in to the point where it puts tension on our auger belt. And then you're going to feel for how much slack you have. If you have too much slack, then you can simply come down here to, on this model, it has a rod where we can just go ahead and loosen off that lock nut and adjust this to tighten it up, because right now it is really slack. So I'm assuming that maybe somebody had a smaller, shorter belt on this thing at some point, and maybe they tried to get as much slack on that as possible. Who knows? This is the first time I've worked on this machine that my customer owns here. So at this point, like I said, I'm gonna leave that cover off. But one more thing I can kind of give you a little tech tip on is, we know that the drive belt is always supposed to spin because this idler pulley is always under tension, and this one is not supposed to spin until you go ahead and push in on your auger and it tensions up that idler there. So at this point, again, with the engine in the off position, go ahead and grab a hold of your pull start cord, and then what we're gonna do is pull on the pull start cord. You're gonna wanna see the drive belt rotate, but not the auger. So if you go ahead and pull on your engine to rotate this pulley up there, that goes back to the crankshaft of the engine, and you see your auger belt spinning, that means that your belt is too tight. And again, you may need to make an adjustment back here to get a little bit more slack on there, because it'll be a new belt. Or sometimes these idler brackets back here are slotted, so you may just have to loosen off your idler pulley here and slide it out a little bit to give yourself a bit more slack on that belt, because you may have too much tension. Because what happens to some belts that definitely aren't the Kevlar belts is they could stretch a little bit. So on the older Craftsmans, like I said, there'll be a slot here, and to get a little bit more tension on your belt, if your auger is slipping and you're noticing that you're not throwing snow like you used to, you simply loosen that off a bit, push your idler pulley in a bit on that idler arm bracket, go ahead and tighten that up, and that may, kind of keep you from having to replace a belt. You may just be able to add a little bit of extra tension. So, like you can see here, when we pull this, the drive belt is spinning and the auger belt is not, so that's good to go. Coming up to the auger lever there, I've gone ahead and put a quick clamp on it to hold it in place. So our idler pulley is all the way in with maximum tension on the belt, and we can see here that we have pretty good tension. I might be able to give it a little bit more, but again, depending on how far you adjust that rod or cable back there will depend on where your idler arm is, right? Too much tension on that cable there could put your idler arm too far forward to the point where the brake on the bottom starts to lift off of the pulley. So if you do get to the point where you let off of your auger lever up top on the handlebars and you notice that your auger is still spinning, you may have your cable adjusted too tight, and you may want to back that off a little bit. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take this machine outside. I know that it already drives perfectly fine because I drove it up into the back of my truck using a set of ramps. So I'm just going to go ahead, take it outside, run it, and make sure the auger engages and that there's no issues. So the machine runs, the auger belt engages, everything is fine. Tension does seem okay when I go ahead and, push down on the lever. You're pretty much just gonna have to have a feel for that. If it's too tight and you have a cable, you could end up snapping a cable. With the rods, you can add a little bit more tension, so you'll end up getting less slip on your belt, but you could end up running it too tight to the point where you're putting too much stress on that belt, which could cause premature failure. But at this point, everything is working fine, so I'm ready to go ahead and replace that plastic housing. And I just wanted to take the time to note that my customer has plastic skid shoes here, and they are worn, but these ones are reversible. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull these off, flip them around, and then go ahead and fix that up for him. I'll see if he wants an oil change as well once I call him and let him know how much his total is for this job, just replacing the belts. There is oil in it, but it was looking a little bit dark. So I'll see if he would like an oil change, and I can go ahead and just, give this thing a once over and see if he wants it serviced. Well, that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said, a very quick and simple process. So go ahead and get your belts changed on your snowblower, and your machine will be back up and running in no time. But a little side note, I just wanted to thank all of my viewers, as the channel recently hit 30,000 subscribers, and it's a very nice Christmas present for me. So I just wanted to take this time to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and hope everyone stays safe over the holiday season. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed the video, think about leaving me a thumbs up. You know, it really helps me out. You can click here to subscribe and click over here to watch one of my previous videos. I upload every single week, so be sure to stop on by next week, check channel out for new content. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.